everyone. Hope everyone's doing well, letting you all navigate the virtual web traffic. Hope your guys' web commute was good.
You're so hilarious, Tom.
Oh man, the compliments are already coming. Huh. Thank you, Shane. All right. Just waiting for another minute or two and then we will get started. If you guys want to already hop into the chat, start saying hey. Eric, shout out to the beard. Looks amazing. If anybody doesn't have speaker view enabled, you might want to check out Eric Becker's West Virginia beard. 10 out of 10. Awesome. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to share my screen really quick, see if I can do this properly. All right, so for those on the call, if you're here, welcome to another NIRSA Ideas in Motion virtual roundtable. My name is still Tom Giles. It has not changed since the last edition. But for those that have that are new to joining this is our young professional roundtable. Thanks for taking time out of your busy schedule to be with us, and I hope that we have a good amount of discussion for you. So most of you have been on a lot of these calls before, so if I sound like a broken record, I'm sorry, but just want to be as welcoming and inclusive as possible for anybody who potentially hasn't been on a call for this. This session is being recorded, and it's going to be posted on the NIRSA website. That is both video and text. So the text that you see on the chat, that will also be saved, as well as any of the video and audio as well. So if you miss something, you can always go back and check it out online. But it's also great for us sharing links where you can always access those links at a later time. You were muted upon entering this meeting, so that's gonna just make sure that we can kind of keep a lid on all of the noise. But feel free to also unmute yourself and ask a question, but you can also use the chat for questions and comments, and I'll be perusing those to see if we can catch anything that's worth discussing. Just as a friendly reminder, when you're speaking or typing, it's really helpful if you can also include your institution to aid in people kind of following up or getting some additional questions, and also being able to potentially help people find your great ideas at a later date. Also, as I said, this is a webinar, not a webinar. I apologize. It's a roundtable, so it's not me talking at you for an hour. It is all of us having a conversation together. And especially this second point is incredibly important with everything that is going on in our country. This is a judgment-free space, and we're going to respect all people's opinions and concerns, and knowing that every single person in this country and on this call are dealing with things in different manners and different perspectives and lenses, and it's our job as NIRSA to be as welcoming and as inclusive as those ideas. So I know that all of us are great at this. It's just being very upfront and honest about it. So let's do a little bit of a virtual meet and greet, get to know the people who are on this call. So if you feel so inclined, go ahead and share the following information in the chat: your name, your institution, your title, how long you've been in the field. And if you feel like being vulnerable with the rest of the group, you can share us what your spirit animal is. I'll go first. My spirit animal is a sloth. The highlight of my day is usually my nap. I think the sloth is a misunderstood creature. And anybody that knows me pretty personally knows that I nurse a pretty healthy love for sloths. All right, seeing some good responses. Awesome, we got a good group of people. I'm not seeing a trend in animals yet, though. That's good. We're all unique. Perfect. Awesome. You guys can continue to put that into the chat. We're all in this together for the remainder of this call, so feel free to get to know some people. If someone else had your spirit animal, feel free to message them and make a new friend. Today's topics for discussion. This is by no means an agenda. This topic and this discussion today, the Young Professional Roundtable, came out of the responses and requests of you, the membership. And we had a lot of different topics to discuss. So I've kind of tried to break them down into 4 major categories. I don't think that we're going to have enough time to get through all of this, but it's definitely something that can guide some of our discussions. But overwhelmingly, the topic that you, NIRSA, wanted to talk about was a young professional's approach to reopening, how to navigate that changing and evolving rules in a very challenging and very innovative time, and then how you're planning to implement what you've learned about yourself, your work from home into your reopening / return to work. Secondly, there was a lot of requests for just kind of doing a mental health check. Today in the city of Miami, it is day 92 of quarantine. So there is some definite social distancing kind of fatigue. And obviously with us being involved in a student-facing organization, a lot of us are struggling or navigating a very difficult time period where it's kind of like the light at the end of the tunnel seems to kind of get farther and farther away. And then another couple of requests came in about end-of-year reviews, giving and receiving feedback. Some of us as young professionals are now officially in a position where we are expected to give professional feedback, but also receive professional feedback that's more tied to advancement within the university. And then we also do have a couple of new participants on the call as well. I like to call them, instead of graduate assistants and undergrads, there are future young professionals, and a lot of them have some awesome questions that there's some experience that members on this call would be more than willing to share and answer questions towards the end. So I'm going to stop my screen share so I can see everybody again. But to kind of start off the discussion, because of how prevalent it is, especially in a lot of different parts of the country, I just want to open it up to the group of any young professionals on how they're approaching returning to work, how their campus is returning to work, and if they're experiencing any change in their roles and how they're navigating that. Well, I guess I can kind of start off. Part of this discussion is something that is relevant to me as well. I think working at FIU in Miami, it's been very different in how our state has reacted. So Miami-Dade is actually a little bit more hesitant to reopen things than the rest of the state of Florida. So a lot of what my role has actually been is transitioning into almost a pseudo facility person to kind of assist us in getting ready to open up at least something on campus. As we are a fee-based university and students are still paying their activity and service fee, and so they're expecting some kind of activity. And as much as we love virtual offerings, a lot of them are just looking for something that they can do physically on space. So I know that I am definitely one person that is going to be a pseudo facility person in the upcoming future, and I am open to any suggestions of how to best navigate that. Eric also shared that he's focusing on the safety of student employees. I think we all are. Eric, would you like to speak a little bit more to that?
Would I, Tom? So obviously you can see my screen, we are reopened right now. And one of the things we had a heavy focus on training. Most of that coronavirus was virtual training through Zoom, having them go through lectures, make sure they are aware of the risks and how to mitigate those. And then the importance of PPE. So not ideal, but Aquatics, we are still wearing masks, gloves, all PPE that we could possibly wear to just mitigate those risks, and then enforcing social distancing guidelines where at all possible.
Wonderful. Thank you, Eric. And were you in charge of those Zoom trainings, or was that something that your institution put together?
As Centers LLC put it together for all of their sites, so 3 of their sites have reopened. So it was more of a above the department came down, but everyone in the department, even pro staff, had to go through the same trainings.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing, Eric.
Hey all, Ethan Cobb from Arizona State here. Thomas, we're kind of all shifting to being pseudo facilities people for at least our reopening. The idea is to have a pro staff on at all times during when the building is open. And so that'll be a lot of flexible schedules from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. during the week and then the weekend as well. So not necessarily 8 hours a day, but at some point there will be pro staff providing coverage. And a lot of this is to support our student staff who are going to be answering a lot of questions and potentially dealing with a lot of upset patrons. So we've taken every piece of equipment that we have, we've put it into Fusion for people to be able to schedule for 50-minute time blocks per day. That way they know where they're going, they come in, they clean it, they use it, they clean it, we clean it, and then it's ready for the next scheduled person. With that, we have spaced out all of our equipment. We have shut down some of it to make sure we provide social distancing. So there's going to be a lot less to go around. And it is summertime, so we shouldn't be as packed, but the Tempe campus at ASU is still a pretty busy place. And so our students are going to have to try and enforce some of these new policies. And so to be able to back them up, we're going to all be providing some facility support at some point.
Thank you for sharing that, Ethan.
No problem.
So just kind of a quick question to the group. You can either type in chat or just kind of give a hand. Is with the kind of changing of roles or kind of the expansion of your current role, are any of you guys taking on a staff that is not historically one that is reported to you? Yes, seeing a lot of head nods in the chat kind of thing. No, not really. Okay, cool. Awesome. George asking a question about using the reservation system. So I apologize if I say your name. Colin, would you like to speak about how IM Leagues is working to reserve space for you guys at your institution?
Yeah, I can. So Colin Ander, Texas A&M University. I'm the intramural sports coordinator. Just finished up my first year. We're currently using IM Leagues for intramurals, just like we normally do. And then IM Leagues has a function where you can add in kind of fitness classes or club sports or some other form on their front tab. So we've converted one of the fitness tabs to strength and conditioning, aquatics, and outdoor adventures. And they go in. So all of our strength and conditioning staff, our aquatic staff, and our climbing staff go in and schedule out pretty much days in advance of when their programs are going to be open, and then patrons will go in through IM Leagues just like they do with intramurals and sign up through there. So something easy that we came up with. Didn't really know Fusion had that option. Kind of looking at it, may have made more sense for us, but IM Leagues is working just fine. So.
I guess one follow-up question was just chatted to me, Colin, for that is who manages that on campus? Is it something where everyone kind of is working together to manage it, or is it falling to the sport programs?
Yeah, so I think on the back end, a lot of it we've taught our strength and conditioning staff, so our pro staff for them, and the aquatics pro staff and the outdoor adventures pro staff on how to go about setting classes up and things like that. But as we all know, IM Leagues has a lot of troubleshooting errors, and those unfortunately fall back on myself and our director for intramurals, because we're really the only ones who know how to troubleshoot those issues. Mm-hmm. So we found that while we were programming virtually and doing everything online, we still had to be at the office and do those things to be able to help people who've come in to work out. So it took a little bit of nudging on our part to go ahead and be all in on that, because it took some time away from our stuff to be able to help with that. But unfortunately, all of that stuff kind of falls back on us because we're the ones who can troubleshoot that stuff.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that.
I have a question to pose to the group. If you are taking on facility operations or already work in that area, what plans have you put in place in terms of early closings or late openings or rotating through spaces to ensure that you can clean throughout the day more than you probably normally would?
I think for us at ASU, we're just making sure we have more staff on hand. So we're dipping in to the sports program staff, the extra aquatic staff, personal training staff, And for those that want hours, that we're going to have plenty of opportunities for them. That way we make sure that we are cleaning our spaces and our equipment as much as possible. And again, when people reserve that equipment on Fusion, they're checking a box acknowledging that they'll clean it before and after use. And our staff members are instructed to clean each piece of equipment as well after each use. And then we're going a bit reduced from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., but we typically reduce our hours in the summer anyways.
I would say that it's going to depend on who cleans your facility normally. I'm sorry, I should introduce myself. I'm the Facilities and Aquatics Coordinator at University of Central Florida. I've been working with our custodial manager to redraft our plans for reopening, which will likely be later in the summer, maybe early August. But we have in-house custodial staff who work there between first shift, second shift, and into the evening. So our access to that kind of high level of cleanliness is something that's very easy. And I know that that is not the case for everyone. So I think being strategic about what you do is important, and having a written plan if possible is always very helpful. Our operating hours will allow for a closing in the middle of the day so that we ensure that we do a deep cleaning of the facility before it opens for the first chunk, and then in the midday before it opens for the second half of the day. It's unconventional, of course, for our normal operations, but we are working to make sure that it's understood why we're doing that so that we provide the most clean environment possible and can guarantee, or not guarantee, but provide as much safety for people as possible.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that, Lisa. Juliana just posed a question to the group if schools are issuing out equipment upon reopening, or if it's reopening is just the building and the equipment inside being accessible to the students.
I can answer that. My name's Justice. I'm at Virginia Commonwealth University. And when we reopen our facility, none of our equipment is going to be able to be checked out. We are going to allow people to still play table tennis and I think badminton, but they have to bring in their own, rackets and birdie or ping pong balls if they want to do that.
Thank you, Justice. Any other approaches to that?
Yeah, my name's Crystal. I'm the coordinator for competitive sports and summer activities at Northern Arizona University. So I'm not directly involved in the discussions around the facility reopening. We're looking to reopen, I think, on the 29th. But we are planning to relocate all of our selectorized weight equipment and some of the cardio equipment down into our MAC gym, which is like a big 2 basketball courts worth of space, and distance those machines so that they're 6 feet or more apart from each other. We're not planning on allowing people to use any free weights, dumbbells, plates, anything like that. We're only going to allow selectorized machines and cardio equipment, and then have the space in the middle be a, I don't know, functional workout area where you can do body weight stuff. But that was our plan as far as being able to maintain cleanliness. It's a lot easier. There's more of a culture already in cleaning, your cardio machine when you're done, or cleaning the handles on whatever selectorized machine you're using. So we thought that was going to be easier than trying to get people to clean their dumbbells or anything like that once they're working out.
Thank you for sharing that, Crystal.
So in regards to reservations, Jake Walker, SAMU State University Coordinator for Competitive Sports. In regards to reservations, we also have outdoor space, our intramural fields that we do open up for reservations. Currently, right now, we're not looking at doing any outside reservations from the community, anything like that, keeping it strictly to Sam Houston students. However, we are not, and I'm not planning to currently offer flag football, basketball, things like that. Are you guys still allowing reservations for flag? We have an organization that does a flag football tournament. Is anybody still allowing reservations like that to take place in their facilities or outside their facilities if you're not currently offering those activities inside or outside?
Has anyone got an answer to that question for Jacob?
I can kind of answer. So here in Flagstaff, I guess because of the weather, we have a pretty extensive, it's called like summer camps and conferencing program at the university, where our fields get a lot of use from youth soccer camps, lacrosse camps, high school band practice, high school football camps, stuff like that. And the university president mandated that those were not like all on-campus programming and events were going to be canceled for the entire summer. So that's kind of a bummer for us because that's a pretty big revenue generator for our department that's now being cut out. But our fields are not like locked or anything. They're just open to use. And there have been a pretty substantial amount of people out there every time I go out there after work, just because people want to do something and there's not really anything else to do besides go around and kick a soccer ball with your friends. So we had looked into, or I guess discussed the possibility of removing the equipment from the fields to try to discourage large groups of people from being out there, but there wasn't really an effective way to do that. So we actually haven't done any of that, but 2 of our soccer goal nets went missing anyway. Yeah, it's been fun times. But so we have the fields just like open for people to use as they want to. We're not doing any sort of reservations or anything like that for the summer.
So any other differences? A lot of schools kind of following in Crystal's footsteps. No outside events, just kind of having the field open.
For us, we're not having outside events, but we're also not opening our fields. So during the summer, when it gets about 110 degrees here, we actually fence off our fields that don't have a permanent fence on it. And then our facility maintenance crew works on reseeding and all of that stuff. So they're still going to be doing that this summer. We do have the occasional person that will climb that fence since there's no opening and they'll go in and kick around a soccer ball, but few and far between. As far as the inside of the facility, we had a choice. We were either going to run our kids camp in person or we're going to open it up to the community, our students and whatnot. It wasn't going to be both because our kids camp typically gets 180 kids and then you have all the other patrons. So we decided to go kids camp virtual and then open it up to those that have memberships, but no outside groups for the summer.
Ethan, I just want to make sure I heard you correctly. You said 110 degrees?
Yeah, it's okay. Already hit 110
awesome.
The last couple of weeks.
I am crossing that place off of vacation destination.
Hey, it cooled down this week. We dipped into the 90s.
Oh, wow.
Don't discount it in the winter. It's a really great place to visit in the winter, I promise.
I will admit, Thomas, I spent a year in South Carolina before here where it's very humid. I would probably prefer the dryness here because if you could find some shade, it's not terrible.
The age-old question. It's not the heat, it's the humidity.
And I grew up in Missouri where it's also humid.
Yes.
So
wonderful. Yep, we're getting all the people from out west saying, "Oh, it's not that bad." It's okay, wonderful.
I've been all over the country, so
yes. The Young Pro Roundtable is not for me to bring up contentious.
Whoa, Crystal coming in hot with the Phoenix is gross.
Yeah.
Sheesh.
All right. Well, I think we might want to move on to the next topic before we get some geographic and weather-based discussions in the chat. So if there's not anybody else that wants to talk about reservations or using the space or wanting to also comment in the chat about weather, feel free. But that second topic that we did want to move on to is more of kind of a mental health check for all of you. It was a topic that kind of came up a lot of young pros were reaching out to me and saying like, hey, can you ask NIRSA how people are kind of staying sane during month 3 or month 4 of a very unprecedented time, but also being able to navigate also returning to work and all of the emotions and kind of, for lack of a better word, fear that comes with that. So a lot of the people who are on this call are looking for those kind of answers. So if people are interested in sharing their perspectives of how they're doing and how they're managing, we would love to hear.
I'll share. I cannot stress enough how important it is to have self-awareness about your mental health, which we all know because we work in a field that is directly correlating to health and wellness. But if you recognize in yourself that you might need a safe place to talk, you should absolutely 100% check for any telehealth opportunities for counseling. I started doing it with our local therapeutic office in town, which in a small town like Ellensburg, there's only one. So I've been doing that every week, and being able to talk to somebody who knows that I can either just vent about my feelings or navigate through them is incredibly helpful. So reducing that stigma about going to therapy, this is the best time to do it, especially if you're an awkward person or somebody who's not comfortable expressing emotion. The best time to do it is when you can do it over video chat.
Thank you for being vulnerable and sharing that, Shayna.
Oh, hell yeah. I'll always talk about my mental health issues. Anybody want to talk about it? Anybody want help accessing resources? I'm your girl.
That's awesome. James Alexander with Loyola Chicago. I've been in the campus rec industry for about 10 years. One of the best pieces of advice I can offer new professionals, look, this is unprecedented, everything that we're going through right now. Pace yourself. If you need to take a step away and you know, recharge your battery, if you've got to take some time away, take a break, do that. That's imperative. If you're not good for yourself, you can't be good for anybody else, right? And so that's a huge piece to this. Everyone is facing difficult and challenging times, and we really have to figure out a way to navigate through that. If you have to lean on family, friends, coworkers, mental health professionals, please do so. It's really just that important. And we're all struggling, and we're all struggling for different reasons. And you know, the best advice I can offer is just to go ahead and take a break when you need to take a break. I have not run into anybody who's a director or an associate director or a supervisor who wouldn't say the same thing. They want to have you at the best you can be. And we all know that we're struggling together. But understand that when you got to take a break, take a break. And that's as important as anything else right now.
Thank you for sharing that, James.
I'll follow up from that. Yeah, thanks Shannon and James for both sharing. That's awesome. I think first of all, the mentality of we are not just working from home right now. We are trying to do work while in a pandemic, among other things going on in our country at the moment. So I think having an understanding of that philosophy, of that logic, is going to help monitor ourselves, our workload, and the idea that it's okay that we're not getting as much done as we typically would. I think that's safe to say. And then additionally, I'll just add that kind of what James said, making sure that you're having communication with your supervisor as well, if necessary. So I'm probably on the more conservative side of returning. I've only left my house to go grocery shopping and going for drives just to get out to stay sane. So I was actually scheduled to be back in office on June 29th. Which I'm not completely comfortable with that personally, to be honest. And so I emailed my supervisor if there's any flexibility or anything that I could do. I wrote a little proposal for why I feel the way I feel, and they granted me 1 extra week to work virtually from home. So now I'm going to be starting on July 6th after July 4th week instead of on June 29th. So that was a little bit of grace that they gave me. So feel free to have those communications with your supervisors or directors, because I feel like they would be in a similar boat where they can be a little flexible with you.
Thank you for sharing that, Brian. And I know it's been shared a lot. Work from home is a term that gets thrown around a lot, but a lot of us are living at work because unfortunately we don't have the option of going to the office. Like, work is just always here, and work is also associated with the pandemic because, as Brian said, you can't just work in a vacuum right now. So definitely taking steps to take care of ourselves. Does anybody else have any other suggestions or tips or tricks of how to navigate this time period?
Yeah, if you haven't found work-life balance with working from home, know that that's not uncommon. Because like Tom just said, it's really hard to disconnect those two things, especially right now. But be cognizant too of what were the things that impacted your ability or inability to find a balance between your normal and your work? Because you'll want to do your due diligence to address that once you are able to return to your traditional work environment. The worst thing that can happen is that we take these behaviors with us back to our offices and throw ourselves in head first, as many of us want to do, because we want to be able to hit the ground running and get everything as back to normal as possible. But we have to build boundaries where there weren't before.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, and I guess with how the discussion is evolving, I want to be very upfront and honest, and knowing that the stresses that we are experiencing right now as professionals in NIRSA are not exclusively limited to coronavirus or COVID-19. The justice and request for justice for George Floyd and among others is something that is at the forefront of what a lot of people are thinking. I know that living in a major metropolitan area, it's something that is literally in my backyard, and it's definitely something that there's not a playbook for it, just like coronavirus, and it's something that I'm open to hearing about other people's ideas of how to best kind of navigate this as a young professional, and being able to work in a scenario of how you can best move forward as a professional and help the cause like Black Lives Matter, and being able to tackle tough topics like race, inclusion, and diversity in higher education and in collegiate recreation.
I can comment on this as well if nobody else wants to talk. You'll all notice I love to talk. I always have a lot to say. Feel free to tell me to shut up anytime. But when it comes to Black Lives Matter and how this is impacting most, if not all of us, if you are somebody who is not a person of color and you're feeling vulnerable and your mental health may be compromised or impacted by what's happening, know that that feeling is very likely 10 times worse and 365 days a year for your colleagues who are people of color. So it's important to check ourselves and understand that this is a hard time and this is an emotional time for most of us. And we have to be cognizant of that, of the language that we use, and check in with each other, but especially check in and support our coworkers who are people of color, and especially our Black coworkers.
Thank you for sharing that, Shayna.
So while we're on the subject of mental health and discussing having open conversations with people of color, every week I've been checking in on my officials and my supervisors, just kind of having a check-in with them on their mental health, how things are doing. And I reached out, especially this week, to that population, and had some really good conversations. A lot of them really appreciate the fact that I did reach out. So I would encourage you, each of you, if you have that time, if you have that opportunity to reach out to your students, make sure that they're doing okay, not just with the coronavirus, but with everything else that's going around. And I think you'll find some sincere appreciation from that population. But I really appreciate you reaching out to them.
Thank you for sharing that, Jacob.
How's it going, everyone? My name is Brianna Keaton. I'm the fitness coordinator at Red Rocks Community College. And just to put in my 2 cents on all of this, well said by everybody, but understanding too that there are probably some professionals on the call today who just may feel uncomfortable or not know where they stand in all of this. And so if I could encourage anything, it would be to expand in your knowledge. That's one. It's very difficult for anybody to understand where anyone is coming from if we don't know the full story, if we don't seek things out, because automatically we fall into our own biases. So I encourage you to do research, to look into things, and to talk to your friends of color as well, especially the Black community in this time, to figure out what ask some questions, essentially. Ask questions that you may have, and be open about it. Because the only way that we can really come together is if we're all knowledgeable, we're understanding, and we're empathetic. And the reason that that's also important is because, again, in campus recreation, we want to make sure that we are also available to our students. And so if you do have students coming to you and they have questions, instead of just saying, I have no idea, being able to share with them some of your thoughts and knowledge pieces that you've gained is really important, and it moves us in a better direction. So that's just something that I wanted to hone in on.
Thank you for sharing that, Brianna.
Yeah.
If anybody else would like to add their thoughts of how they're approaching this and navigating it, please feel free. We all learn from each other.
Hey, Sylvain, first year coordinator at Penn State. So once for me is just giving people the option of having a space where they can talk freely and be heard. And I work with a very homogeneous white population, and that's the population I have. That's the population I can influence, and there's a positive to that. So for me yesterday, and every week I have a weekly meeting with my student staff, and yesterday just open up the topic is, how do you feel about what's going on right now, and do you want to talk about it? And that's, once you open it up like that, the conversation takes its own shape. You usually don't have to do much. You become a moderator, pretty much giving people a chance to talk. And from there on, the whole hour was just students talking about how they felt about the letter the president of the university sent, how they feel about what they've seen on campus, what are some actions they're taking, asking about what action they could be taking. So a lot of it, I think it just starts with opening up the option. Once you open that door, here's the table, let's all sit at the table, let's have a conversation, then you find out a lot more than you would have otherwise. So I would say at the very least, just open that option. Here's the table, set the table, and let people come to it. And you'll be surprised by how much your students have, how much knowledge they have on the subject, how much they can open your eyes to the subject, and how much you're going to learn from each other in that aspect.
Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, and to kind of piggyback off of that idea, I know what our students are craving right now is authenticity and authentic leadership, in the sense of, as I'm sure a lot of you are aware, there's lots of resources out there to go and find to help educate yourself. And just this morning I was reading of something particular to higher education, and this is one of those issues where I'm not in charge of my student staff in this. I'm a partner with them, and I'm enabling them to make change. And a lot of the times this is where they are the experts, and I need to be the leader that's okay with being able to step to the side and say, hey, we're in this together. Because ultimately, like, you hold just as much sway on this campus as I do. It's not like me training at a rules clinic of like, I need to impart knowledge onto you. This is definitely one of those times where, as Sylvain said, it's just being an authentic, moderating voice and creating a space for dialogue. Awesome. So if there's anything else people would like to add to it, how they're staying sane, how they're feeling, how they're checking in on their students. If there's nothing else, we can move on to our next major theme. Going once? Going twice? All right, moving on. All right, so with the end of the year upon us for those of us in the semesters, I don't know, for those on the call in the quarter system, I don't know if you're done yet, but I hope you're close, because it's June. But end of year reviews and being able to give and receive feedback is a topic that was asked to kind of open up the floor of kind of being able to get some tips and tricks of how to navigate that. A lot of us as first year coordinators, we have never had a professional end of year review. So just kind of asking for some tips and tricks of how to navigate this and how to get the best outcome. So I guess I can start because my end of year review is actually tomorrow. So I'm anxious for some advice and tips and tricks. But obviously, a lot of us have been in positions where we have given more of that informal feedback, where it's kind of just in passing in the office or out at the fields, out on the gym floor, where we're kind of giving that more informal feedback to help them improve. Yes, Stephen, I'm going to try and reframe the question, which is more just what are some pieces of advice or what are some tips and tricks that you would give to have a successful end of year review with your supervisor?
I actually just had mine yesterday.
Hey.
But I believe in myself and the work I've already done. Just went in, I had notes, and we just did a normal Zoom call, shared screen, and was just very honest with my own performance as far as what I really believe in myself as like my good points, and what I also believe and know my weaknesses and where I need to improve it, and just being honest with yourself first about like what you know you can do, because I know it's like coming in as a first year professional. I know I'm way harder on myself than my actual supervisor is, but I'm also able to be realistic and highlight the strengths that I actually do bring to the program. So kind of don't just be too hard on yourself, like also like think about the stuff that you do well, because at the same time we kind of want to be humble. There's still the element of promotions, raises, that kind of stuff that's tied to end of year review. So definitely talk about what you do need to improve it, but like, you know, be real with how you've done.
Thank you for sharing that. Congratulations on getting through the review.
I'd like to weigh in if I could, as someone who, you know, I've been around a little bit, as I said before, but some of the best pieces of advice I can give is come in with an open mind, you know, understand that this is a development process, and your supervisor is trying to help you get better. I think that, as Stephen said, you know, understand what your strengths are and your weaknesses are is important. Understand what you do well and what you don't do well is important. Being able to accept feedback, whether it be positive or negative, is important. Work on goals. What are your goals for yourself professionally? 1 year, 2 year, 3 years? Where do you want to go? What do you want to do? Where do you want to be? I think those are important as well. Understanding where you are now, but where you want to go and how you can get there, and helping create that roadmap with your supervisor, I think is a huge piece also.
Thank you for sharing that, James.
The big thing for me when I went to my end of the review and the end of the spring semester is do a lot of prep work on my own before I went into that meeting. So really taking a chance to self-evaluate myself before I was trying to do it on the spot. It allowed me to be a lot calmer in that meeting and allowed me to be very open and critical with myself in that meeting, and then answer all those questions fully and honestly and be able to be confident in those answers. And I think that's something that as rec professionals, we are constantly evaluating, constantly doing assessment with what we're doing. And I think it's important that we also make sure that we're doing it to ourselves on a continuous basis. So when we have these meetings, we're going into them prepared.
Thank you, Jacob.
Hey, Tom, I'll add one more thing in here on top of that is hopefully everyone throughout the entire year is writing down all the things that you're doing, whether that's professional development for yourself, whether that's new additions and innovations for your program. Make sure to have all that documented, not only for yourself as you go into those meetings, but also for your resume down the road. Because you never want to forget one or two things that might stand out to an employer who's going through something similar. So just keep all that in mind as you go out throughout the entire year, not just when it comes time for your evaluation.
Brian, to really quickly add to that, how do you personally write that down? Is that like a sticky note that lives in your desk, or are you the notes app kind of person?
For me, I just throw everything like at the bottom of my resume. So like I haven't really updated my resume since I applied for jobs 3 years ago, but it's a disaster of a whole bunch of random things at the very bottom of it, making it like 6 pages right now.
Wonderful. That's awesome.
One day I'll edit it, or maybe not.
I'd like to add that here at ASU, up until now, it's been really a focus on what are our superiors' perceptions of our work and not necessarily how we work with our students. So what I am trying to implement is an evaluation form for our students of their supervisors, so us as coordinators. And that way we can use that in evaluating ourselves. I've, in my experience, sometimes have gotten better feedback on how I can improve from students rather than my superiors, because they may not always be able to be very hands-on. So I am definitely going to be looking to institute that, and then that can help me in my reflection, and then can also hopefully help our assistant director and associate director, review, more holistic what I do as part of my job, right? This last evaluation I had, really nothing was involved my leadership capabilities or my relationship with my students. It was a lot of working from here up than from here to down. So
wonderful.
I will hopefully will make it a little better of a process.
Thank you, Ethan. Yeah, I guess where I'm coming from in this question as well is kind of touching on points that each of you made, is that I know that a lot of us on this call, our biggest critics are ourselves. So it's striking the balance between kind of owning your successes, but also owning your failures, and where you can kind of put that scale. Because I know a lot of the times when we're undergrad students or we're in our graduate assistantships, we feel like we're really good at it, but all of a sudden you throw this idea of, okay, maybe there's like an incentive tied to this. Like if I don't do well in this performance review, like maybe I don't get a raise, maybe I don't get blank, everything else like that. And a lot of the feedback and advice that I've been given is kind of just approaching it as it's feedback. Don't make it bigger than it is, but also approach it like how Brian, Eric, and a lot of others have said, of kind of being able to best prepare for a meeting, because you have to know what you're bringing to the table too. So, all right. So if there's nobody else who wants to add on that topic, we are getting close to that end of meeting. So there's about 10 minutes left, and I typically have reserved these last 10 minutes on the previous editions of this call for our future young professionals to ask questions of the pros that are on the call, of how they can get some tips and tricks of transitioning from a graduate assistantship into the professional ranks of NIRSA. So students on the call, take it away.
Julie Johnson here, formerly of the University of Nebraska. I've been unemployed for 2 weeks now. I'm going crazy. So if you have a job available, please let me know. What were the hardest things that you all experienced transitioning from an assistantship or an internship of some sort to a full-time professional position?
COVID-19 is a good answer. That is definitely one of those things. But Julie, to give you my honest feedback, the major difference for me is it's more in the sense of your graduate assistantship kind of gives you the slice of the professional world and you get ready for it. But then when you get into that whole 9 to 5, it definitely takes on a different meaning, in the sense of instead of you having schoolwork, that void is now filled with work. And it's definitely something that you have to navigate, because it's not just as like, oh, I'm going to work 4 extra hours a day than I was a graduate assistant. It's categorically different, and it's something that you have to just kind of prepare yourself for, and know that there is a learning curve, and it's not your inability or an imposter syndrome. It's just you truly learning the ropes and becoming a professional, because every single person on this call can probably tell you that their first year or first couple of months on the job was not great in terms of like a linear growth from their graduate assistantship experience on. It's not like, all right, day one of job is exactly where I was the end of my GA.
I'll go. For me personally, and this could be different based off your experiences, where you've been, where you're going, but it's been, I guess, the politics of being involved from the full-time aspect. You know, as a graduate assistant, I was pretty siloed in my functional area. Discussions were had, you know, in meetings I wasn't involved with, but we were the ones to carry out the action items. Okay, that's part of the job. Yeah, you get into a full-time job. Sometimes, like in my case, maybe I didn't do this correctly, but I took ownership of what we were doing. Or tried to, and how we were operating, but then to find out in meetings that those decisions weren't necessarily being made with my input. And so just, I guess, trying to deal with that personally and professionally, while also, you know, finding the balance of when should you speak up and pitch in your idea, even if it differs from those above you, versus when should you kind of cut your losses and just kind of do what you're being told. And I know that's a weird way to think about it, and I hope not everybody has to deal with this, but I wouldn't be surprised if you did. But definitely the political side of things, where, you know, things aren't always in your control, even though you expected to have more control in your transition from GA to full-time.
Thank you, Ethan.
Did not mean to put a dark spin on that, by the way. Sorry.
So for me, it was kind of just understanding that just because you transition doesn't mean you are in that position knowing everything you need to know. So it's still a learning experience. So going from a GA to a professional, which the biggest learning curve was that having my office hours at 2 p.m. as a GA was probably the worst decision, because waking up to be at work by 8 a.m. was almost impossible for me. So my first month was learning to kind of just get there, be on time, and just show the professionalism, because now you have a lot more eyes looking at you. You're expected to be there at a certain time, and if you don't do it, and someone else is going to be looking, and they will use that. I'm not going to say they will use that against you, but they will use that information at later times. So just understanding that you are, a lot more eyes are going to be on you, a lot more is expected of you, but also understanding that you're still learning and having honest conversations with your supervisor. So that, because my supervisor luckily was able to help me with a lot of what I needed, and a lot of supervisors are there to help you. So having those honest conversations, asking help where you need help, and just continuing to learn. I think that's the best thing you could do when you're transitioning, is you're just learning. The same way we're learning as GAs, our first year as professionals, I think it's when we're still learning. And hopefully my second year, I've grown, and I hope I've grown from where I was in my first year.
For those of you that are job hunting right now, keep in mind too, the pandemic is not the only thing that could potentially be getting in the way of job postings being available. We are also, before the pandemic started, we are in the worst economic recession in decades. So don't feel like you've failed once quarantine stops if you're still having a hard time finding a job. It could take a while. You not only have to find a position that aligns with your interests, you have to find the right fit for you, the right place for you. Mm-hmm. There's so many factors that go into that. So it might mean applying to, 60 jobs a month until you get an interview, and you still might not land the job after that. But know that that is not necessarily a reflection of you or your application or your resume or your experience.
Awesome. Yeah, if anybody else has a response to Julie's question, feel free to chime in. Otherwise, we'll move on to another question if there is one.
I had a real quick point to make. Agreed with all the other points. For me, a huge piece of transition was not bringing your old university, everything you had learned, and trying to make that into the new one. So I'll use myself as an example. I was at NC State, I was at UNCG, and then I was at Marshall. Don't make your new position exactly what you did there, because it's completely different. New department, new program area, new population you're dealing with, and those policies, procedures, whatever is in place, learn them, and don't just try and bring your old place and recreate it at the new facility. Take that first year to learn what it's about before you start making huge changes to the program.
Thank you, Eric.
I agree with Eric as well. And one thing that definitely helped me as I transitioned was listen to the students who the staff you're kind of inheriting if you're coming there and you're not working there. You may know a lot and you may feel like you're the professional, but at the end of the day, these are the people who play in the intramural leagues. These are the people who use the facilities. They know how it works already. So come with the open mindset to listen and to figure out. Well, I remember one of the first things I said to my staff was, okay, what do you guys do well? Let's do more of that. What do we need to improve? Let's try fix that. And just coming in, listening, and being open like that, like really helped kind of establish the trust kind of straight away.
Thank you for sharing that. Mike, take us home.
Yeah, so my question, I've heard just as you progress into professional role and keep moving on up, there's more time you spend completing administrative duties and you're in the office and less time with the students. So kind of what's the best way to make sure you're still staying connected with the students as you kind of become further removed from a student yourself?
I could chime in. Personally, I think that it's a matter of situating yourself into those situations. So for example, as we get into larger, more important, but when we get into bigger positions like associate director and director, we do have a different focus and a different outlook. My focus now is on fitness and wellness, but I have to understand that if I want to become a director, that's not going to be the primary thing that they're going to be hiring me off of. It doesn't necessarily matter how much, fitness and wellness knowledge I have, how many certifications I have in that particular role. It's going to be some other stuff that's going to matter and that's going to take precedence. And so essentially, I just kind of want to use the example of our director at Washington State when I was there as an undergrad. And she always taught a group fitness class, for example. She taught a sunrise yoga Tuesdays and Thursdays every single semester that I was there. And she did a few other things. And those were opportunities for her to make sure that she was still connecting with the students without having to be completely lost and bogged down with all of her other responsibilities. And so to answer that, in my opinion, I think it's just, as we get into those roles, just finding those areas where we want to, implant ourselves, if you will, so that we can still have those opportunities to, grow with our students and grow those relationships.
Awesome. We've got about time for one more response to Mike's question.
Mike, something I've seen with our associate director here, he has to take a student to lunch. So that was his goal this year, was to take every single supervisor, program assistant, or official that was willing to lunch. And that's how he stayed connected, which as a coordinator, I feel like I would be more connected to the student, but it feels like by the end of the year, he knew everyone within the intramural side and the club sports side, just because everyone kind of took up on that free lunch idea. So it depends on how you go about it. And I think his way kind of definitely worked. And that's something I definitely want to add to my repertoire going forward, where just find a way to stay connected with the students, whether it's competitive sports, just playing the team with them, or taking them to lunch as Dexter here does it. I would say you just find a way to keep that connection going.
So real quick, me and my GA, we started a staff lunchtime hoops session. So basically like an invitation to the whole staff. This is the young professional roundtable. I'm still young, I'm still out there playing basketball. So yeah, we have like lunchtime hoops where the intramural refs, facilities, staff, me, some of our GAs play basketball.
Nothing like team building, like noon basketball and double doubles. All right, Stephen? Absolutely. All right, well, everyone, thank you for attending today's roundtable. We had a roller coaster discussion. We were all over the place. I am less confident now in saying that you may be able to see this recording later. So I do want to say thank you all for joining. If you guys are interested in this being hosted again, go ahead and put it in the chat, say yes. I hope that we can see this online and I can see this and review it. But for the rest of us, enjoy the rest of your day.